On side opposition, we recognize the reality that some wars must be fought on both sides of this House. The question then is, how do we get the best kinds of interventions? We say in opposition that we get smarter interventions when we care about the lives of these soldiers, when we believe and hold them to a conduct of heroism, and it is for those reasons we're incredibly proud to oppose. I'm going to talk about two constructive arguments in this speech. First, why you create a far worse counterfactual in the absence of glorification of soldiers as heroes, and second of all, why holding them to heroes means that we get more accountability in the long run. I want to first get into general refutation of side proposition, but I think a lot of it is implicitly and directly clashing with a constructive case that we'll bring to you later. The first claim we get from side proposition is that you get more interventions at the point when you have more soldiers that you can take and you view them to be heroes. We think it is very unlikely that you get more of these interventions because the reason why you frame them as a hero is because you frame it around the difficulty and enormous sacrifice that they have to make to get to war. We think it is unlikely that countries would like to sacrifice the lives of these heroes, especially if they glorify them to such an extent. In fact, we prioritize protecting their lives and only intervening in smart cases. We think additionally there are far more costs than just having soldiers for going into war, so it is unlikely that states will only pick to go to interventions on their side of the House. We think that some interventions will have to be fought. We'll talk about why we get them to be smarter on our side of the House. And the next important claim from side proposition is that it's harder to call out abuses when you glorify heroes to be something special, someone infallible, and someone that are gods. We think it is not heroic behavior to commit the kinds of atrocities that they're talking about on their side of the House. So we think it is very unlikely you're able to do that. In fact, glorifying and collectivizing them as heroes doesn't mean we can't call out specific instances in which they violate the norm of being a hero, and in fact, we think there's more incentive to enact that kind of heroic behavior on our side of the House. Finally, their argument about why you harm soldiers and coerce them into lives that are very difficult is incredibly uncomparative because some people have to fight these wars on both sides of the House, and we're going to prove to you on our side of the House in our second constructive argument why that gets a far lot worse, and the types of coercion you get from mass conscription is far more coercive. So I want to talk about the first constructive argument then for side opposition about why in absence of the glorification of heroes, you get a far worse counterfactual. I think we've proven that you probably need to fight wars on both sides of the House for a host of different reasons: economic, political, ideological. The fact that you need resources, that you want regional power for defense, for security reasons, or to combat ideologies that are fundamentally threatening your state and your nation. We think glorification is crucial for getting soldiers that are needed to fight those wars. First of all, I think proposition already conceded when they talked about in their second argument the enormous cost of being a soldier, that you risk your life, that it's incredibly emotionally traumatizing, and that you get PTSD. On their side of the House, if you don't glorify these individuals, it is very likely you view them as expendable, because soldiers fundamentally are using their bodies for gains and outcomes of the state. By their nature, it appears that we are instrumentalizing them. On their side of the House, it is very likely people don't want to be that pawn in the game and don't want to be used in that way. The only way we can get buy-in is when we use glorification as a pushback against all of the costs of war. We think it is far likely on our side of the House when you're celebrated as a hero, when you're treated better upon the choice that you make to be a soldier during the war and after the war, then you're far more likely going to get people wanting to become soldiers. On their side of the House, all you see are the costs and the harms, and the view of you being expendable in a war where you're just another body to win and get gains means that it is very difficult to get any people that are willing to go to war on their side of the House, or the types of people willing to go to war are those that are belligerent and have the poor incentives that they characterize. That is incredible. Increased pay, we think, is very unlikely given that states have a lot of constraints, and especially because of the fact that increased pay doesn't override all the harms that you described in your first speech about risking your life. Having cushier pay doesn't really compensate for the fact that you might die. We make that more bearable on our side of the House when you'll be celebrated as a hero afterwards. The second argument then about why you get more accountability in the long run. The thesis of this argument is that you hold soldiers to a higher standard when you expect heroism. First of all, you have more codification of soldier conduct. In order to solidify what heroism really means, we're more likely to get things like we saw the glorification caused the Geneva Convention to be established in the first place. You have an incentive to reduce harms to soldiers, and you have mutual respect for soldiers at the point when you characterize them to be heroes. To solidify that, you're more likely to get that kind of conduct. We think that's incredibly important because there are many examples of this in history where we banned chemical weapons from being used against soldiers because we viewed them as being important individuals as opposed to expendable beings that you're just using as a pawn to win a war. So we're far more likely to get the codification of soldier conduct at the point when we expect everyone to be a hero and to follow into that belief. But second of all, you get more of a push for institutional accountability, like war courts to prosecute for war atrocities. For the public to buy in, we don't think it's very heroic behavior to kill other individuals, and we don't think the public or state would believe that either. In fact, we think they're likely going to set up these courts because they don't want any individual soldier to tarnish the overall image of heroism. You strengthen the principle of honor more harshly at the point when you need everyone to be a hero to buy into that collective image. But finally, soldiers themselves better internalize the act and necessity of being a hero. We think it's more likely you do things like sacrifice yourself for the greater good of the whole contingent, when you view yourself as being a hero and that you need to do that in order to serve your country. That is absolutely important because sacrifice is necessary in war sometimes to save more lives in the long run. But moreover, we're more likely to get things like individual soldiers stopping war crimes or stepping in to prevent their fellow comrades from acting in problematic ways, because you can't violate that norm of heroism, and you yourself internalize that you have to act in a proper way to enact and fulfill your right and duty as being a hero. On both sides of this debate, we need to fight necessary interventions. We support a world in which we have more power and people who opt into the military who want to defend their country as opposed to kill other individuals. We get more accountability, we get better wars, and we're very proud to oppose.